Welcome to City of Blacktown, located 34 km west of the Sydney Central Business District. The city of Blacktown is home to 8195 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, the second highest after Capleton, and holds strong cultural significance. The area was known in the 1820s as the Blacks' Town because it was home to a school for Aboriginal children dubbed the Blacktown Native Institute. Anita Lynch was born in Sydney on 2nd November 1959 to Gary Bernard Lynch, a graphic artist with the Royal Australian Air Force, and Grace Peggy Lynch, a nurse. As a teenager, she participated in beauty pageants, including winning the Miss Western Suburbs pageant in November of 1979, and had a promising career as a model. However, she decided instead to follow in her mother's footsteps and also become a nurse. Anita's family described her as beautiful in mind, body, and soul. She was very compassionate, very caring, and very empathetic. And as Anita was taking up some kind of nurse training, along the way she got swept off her feet by an older man called John Cobby. The two of them met because he was also a training nurse at the same hospital that Anita was. He had been there a couple years longer than Anita had. He was a few years older than her, a few years deeper into the course. He was 23 and she was 20, and he fell head over heels for Anita. Their personalities contrasted each other quite nicely. Like Anita was quite a grounding energy for John, and John was kind of all over the place. He was the fun and life of the party, and they kind of brought each other to a nice level. Like he brought Anita up and made her a bit of confident and lively, and in return she kept him in check. And he said when he first saw Anita, he just thought she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He actually had a girlfriend at that time, and he ended up splitting up with his girlfriend because of Anita. He said he could never thought he could get a woman like Anita, like she was just out of his league. And he wasn't good enough for her. He wasn't enough attractive for her, but luckily for him, Anita was the one that made the first move. They kind of bumped each other in the corridor and she made conversation, and in that moment he thought, oh my god, maybe she likes me, and so he asked her out for a meal and they went out. They spent hours and hours talking, and the next night they went out for another meal and they just clicked. So they met and started dating in 1980, and by 1981 they were actually engaged. John Cobby said he just fell so in love with this woman that he didn't want to do the rest of his life without her. So why not just put a ring on it? In 1982, the couple got married and Anita Lynch became Anita Cobby. Anita worked in Sydney and commuted daily from her home in Blacktown. On the day of the murder, she finished work at Sydney Hospital at 3 p.m. and met friends for dinner in nearby Redfern. Cobby then caught a train from Central Railway Station to Blacktown Station. Arriving at Blacktown, she would usually ring her father, who would pick her up. On the day of her death, she most likely decided to walk home after finding the phone to be out of order and no taxis available at the taxi rank. Aside from her killers, only two witnesses saw Anita after she left the train station. Anita did not return home. Her family initially thought she was staying overnight with a friend, but after learning that she failed to appear at work the next day, they reported her missing on 3rd February. On the morning of 4th February, her naked body was found in the paddock by a farmer investigating what his cows were milling around. Anita's body was initially identified by her distinctive wedding ring, which was still on her finger when she was found. Her estranged husband, John, was initially suspected of her murder but was quickly cleared. Anita was walking alone from the station along Newton Road, Blacktown, around 10 p.m. when the gang of 5 men drove up beside her and stopped their stolen white HT Holden Kingswood. 2 men leaped from the car and dragged her into the vehicle as she kicked and screamed. A 16-year-old boy, his younger sister, and mother heard someone screaming from their house directly opposite and had gone outside in time to see Anita forced into the attacker's car. The boy ran outside the road to help, but the car drove off before he reached it. Returning home, he telephoned the police to report what he had seen. A few minutes later, their neighbor and his girlfriend arrived home, and after being told of the abduction, they drove off to search for the car. They eventually drove down Green Road, now known as Peter Brock Drive, Prospect, and stopped by the now empty Holden, where the man used a spotlight to search the adjacent paddock. Seeing nothing in the paddock and believing the car he was looking for was a different model Holden, he returned home. The attackers later stated that they had hidden in the long grass to avoid the spotlight and waited for the man to leave. Once inside the car on Newton Road, Anita had been ordered to strip off her clothes but refused, begging her attackers to let her go and saying she was married and also menstruating. Her attackers punched Anita repeatedly, breaking her nose and both cheekbones before forcing her to perform fellatio on all five men. The attackers then drove to a service station to purchase fuel using money stolen from Anita's purse. Anita was then driven down Green Road to the secluded paddock while being held down in the car, raped repeatedly, and being continually beaten by her five attackers. They then dragged the brutally beaten Anita into the paddock along a barbed wire fence where they dumped her and continued to sexually and physically abuse her for some time. According to his raped confession, one of the attackers, John Travers, then became concerned that Anita could identify them because she had seen their faces and heard their names, and convinced that the other attackers must kill her. Urged on by the others, Travers slit her throat, almost severing her head. According to the medical examiner's report, Anita's body showed extensive bruising on her head, breasts, face, shoulders, groin, thighs, and legs consistent with a systematic beating, including a blow of considerable force around the right eye. She also had lacerations on her hips, thighs, and legs from the barbed wire, several cuts to her neck, resulting in the severing of her hair and windpipe and near decapitation, and many cuts to her hands and fingers, resulting in the near severing of three of her fingers, which likely occurred when she raised her hands to her face, trying to protect herself from the knife. The medical examiner later testified that after Cobby's throat was cut, she would have died within 2 minutes. He also testified that some radio bulletins, purportedly based on his own report, contained misinformation about the type and extent of Cobby's injury. She was not mutilated apart from the slashing of her throat and hands. There had been no attack with a knife on her stomach or genitals, and her shoulders had not been dislocated. The Australian public reacted with anger upon hearing details of Anita's murder. On 6 February, the NSW state government posted a $50,000 reward for information leading to the capture of Anita's killers. Also on 6 February, morning host radio John Laws obtained a leaked copy of Cobby's autopsy report, which contained explicit details of her injuries, and read it live on the air, both shocking and galvanizing public sentiment. In a 2016 interview with 7 News, Laws said he did it because he felt the general public ought to know, and that it incited anger in the public that murders like this were happening, and we were not being given the full details. John Raymond Travers, considered the ringleader of the gang, was raised in poverty in Blacktown, the oldest of 8 children from unmarried teenage parents. By age 14, he was already an alcoholic and was expelled from high school during year 10 for being continually disruptive to other students. Beyond schooling, Travers held few jobs and relied mostly on unemployment benefits as a source of income. He was eventually committed to Boys Town, a juvenile detention facility, by his mother. His father, with whom he never shared a close relationship, left the household in 1981. Finding it difficult to support the family, Travers relied on crime to provide food, stealing animals such as chickens and ducks from nearby households. Witnesses have recounted that on several occasions he had bought a live sheep for a barbecue and slit the animal's throat as he sodomized it before roasting its carcass on a spit. Michael Murdoch was a childhood friend and criminal associate of Trevor's. He had also spent a great part of his childhood in juvenile prisons, where he experienced sexual assaults. He was known to have written to politicians during this period of imprisonment seeking protection from such assaults. Michael Murphy, aged 33, was the eldest of the nine Murphy children. He was sent to live with his grandmother when he was 12 years of age. Gary Murphy, aged 28, a hearing impairment affected Gary's schooling and he left early to seek work. He was noted as being an able and willing worker before the crimes. Gary's strong interest in cars led to him facing several car theft related charges in the years preceding the murder. He was known to have a very violent temper. Les Murphy, aged 22, was the youngest of the Murphy children and was known as having the worst temperament. He had faced children's court on many occasions for a number of theft-related offenses before being accused of the Cobby murder. On 9th February, police reenacted Cobby's movements on the night of her disappearance in the hope of jogging the memories of travelers or others who might have seen her. Constable Debbie Wells wore similar clothing to Anita and traveled the 9:12 p.m. train to Blacktown. Detectives interviewed the passengers and showed them photos of Anita while Wallace walked the length of the train during the journey. Following a tip-off from a police informant regarding the stolen Holden, police started searching for Travers, Michael Murdoch, and brothers Les, Michael, and Gary Murphy after they discovered that some of them had a history of violence and that Travers had a reputation for carrying a knife. On 21st February, police arrested Travers and Murdoch at the home of Travers' uncle and Les Murphy at Travers' own house. Murdoch and Murphy were charged with offenses relating to stolen cars and released on police bail. Travers, who admitted that he had stolen a car, made conflicting statements about the murder and was detained in police custody. While in custody, he requested that a friend be called so she could bring him cigarettes. The phone number was handed to the investigating police, who contacted the friend, a woman. The woman, Travers' aunt, eventually dubbed Miss X, agreed to help with the investigation, met with an officer, and gave him details of Travers' background. Miss X was subsequently sent back in to talk to Travers, agreeing to hide a recording microphone device in her bra while she visited him in his cell and was able to obtain a confession. Miss X later went to Murdoch's home while wearing the concealed recording device to capture his statements on tape as well. Eventually, 5 men were arrested and charged with the murder. Police were praised for their quick response in capturing all suspects involved. In total, 22 days had elapsed from the time of the murder to the time all suspects were taken into custody. The trial began in Sydney on 16th March 1987. Before proceedings began, Travers changed his plea to guilty. Sydney newspaper The Sun published a front-page story on the day the trial began, carrying the headline "Anita Murder Man Guilty," alongside a large image of Travers. The news story also referred to Michael Murphy as an unemployed prison escape of no fixed address, and another in the same paper detailed Murphy's criminal convictions and his recent escape from Silverwater Correctional Center, where he was serving a 25-year sentence for a string of burglaries and thefts. The jury was discharged due to the potentially prejudicial information published about Murphy. Trial for the remaining members of the gang lasted 54 days, with the men's defense relying on convincing the jury of their minimal involvement in the beating and murder. On 10th June 1987, all 5 were found guilty of sexual assault and murder. On 16th June, they were each sentenced in the Supreme Court of New South Wales to life imprisonment plus additional time without the possibility of parole. As of 2021, John Travers was housed in Wellington Correctional Center in maximum security. In 1988, he was transferred to Maitland Gaol and was housed there until 1992, when he was transferred to Goulburn Correctional Center in 1996. He and another inmate were being transported from Goulburn to Long Bay Hospital at Long Bay Correctional Complex when they attempted to escape from the prison van by hacksawing through and kicking in the back door. When the attempt was noticed, the van pulled over at Boral Police Station and the two were arrested and charged. Travers were regularly kept in protection at the Goulburn because he was often involved in bloody fights with other inmates and threatening prison staff. From 2005 to 2015, Travers was housed in Lithgow Correctional Center. Travers was eventually transferred to Wellington Correctional Center. Michael Murphy was housed in Long Bay Correctional Complex in maximum security. In 1988, Michael was housed along with his brother Gary in the newly built Special Protection Unit in Long Bay Correctional Complex. In 1992, he was transferred to Lithgow Correctional Center, where he undertook Year 10 studies and did weekly work. A few years later, Michael Murphy was transferred to Goulburn Correctional Center, where he spent most of his imprisonment, and he usually kept to himself and stayed out of trouble. In 2018, Murphy was transferred from Goulburn to Long Bay due to deteriorating health. In September 2018, it was reported that he had terminal cancer and was living in palliative care. He died in Long Bay Hospital on 21st February 2019 at the age of 66. In 2021, Gary Murphy was housed in Goulburn Correctional Center in maximum security. In 1988, he was housed along with his brother Michael Murphy in the newly built Special Protection Unit in Long Bay Correctional Complex. A few years later, Gary Murphy was transferred to Maitland Gaol Correctional Center, where he was housed till the prison's closure. On 23rd August 2020, it was revealed by the Daily Telegraph that Murphy at some point had been moved back from Long Bay to Goulburn. And as of 2021, Les Murphy was housed in Goulburn Correctional Center in maximum security. In 2005, he got into trouble for failing a urine test. As of 23rd August 2020, it was revealed by the Daily Telegraph that Murphy was still serving his sentence at Goulburn. Michael Murdoch was formerly a maximum security inmate at Goulburn Correctional Center until December of 1999, when he was reclassified to medium security and transferred to Bathurst Correctional Complex. In 2002, Murdoch was reclassified as maximum security and transferred to Lithgow Correctional Center. Anita Cobby's parents would join forces with Christine and Peter Simpson, the parents of murder victim Ebony Simpson, to create the Homicide Victims Support Group of Australia, a community support group that helps families deal with heinous crimes. The Lynches also campaigned in seeking tougher sentencing and truth in sentencing laws, which eventuated after Cobby's murder. Anita's father, Gary Lynch, died on 14 September 2008, aged 90, suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Her mother, Grace, died of lung cancer in 2013 at the age of 88. This is truly one of the most tragic and brutal murder of a person I have ever heard, and I truly feel for her family and for Anita Cobby because she had so much to give to this world, but her life was cut short by these monsters. And that's all I have for today's video. Thank you all for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video as well. Till then, take care and stay safe.